Say, okay, say, I'm going to be having an interview.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome back. It is exactly 10:20 a.m. This is News and Views on Salam Media. And of course, this is a special interview for today. We normally end off at 10 o'clock, but due to the availability or non-availability earlier on of our special guest, that of course is Dr. Iqbal Survé, based in the Western Cape. We have overrun on the show, and we do hope you're going to stay with us. And we do hope that this interview is going to give you a bit of an insight into matters at Sekunjalo. Dr. Iqbal Survé, Assalamu alaikum, welcome to the program.
Walaikum salam, Julie, and thank you for having me on the program. And I appreciate that you've fitted into my schedule. Normally, every morning, I do a combination of gym and Tai Chi in the mornings. So I finish at about 9:30. So
Oh,
that's what I
all
told
right.
you. But thank you for that. Appreciate it. Yeah.
Lucky you that you can still have the
Um,
time to take care of your body, mind, and soul. Alhamdulillah for that. Let me start with by asking you this. You are a qualified physician, an entrepreneur, and an ardent philanthropist. You're born and educated in Cape Town, South Africa. You were, or probably still are, affectionately known as the struggle doctor. That was a big title, obviously. Why did you change, leave the struggle doctor days behind you? I know that you were an activist as well, and has gone into business and very specifically media, possibly the first Black person in our country to take on such a huge role in the media.
Julie, I'm a Cape Townian, so I'm born and bred around the mountain in Cape Town. I was born in Salt River, and most people don't know that, although we were just there for like a year. And then I grew up in Kenilworth, um, and I went to school at Douglas Road Primary School in Wynberg, and I went to Livingston High School in Claremont. And when I was there, I was, heading up the SRC. Ibrahim Rasool was still on my executive committee when I was in the SRC. I was part of the committee of 81 that fought the struggle. When I went to UCT, I was one of only 16 non-white students that were admitted at the time in a class of 200 to do medicine. And the university was still very racial, and I was part of the student movement. So when I became a doctor, many of the people involved in the struggle became my patients. When I practiced in Lansdowne in the community after working at Livingston Hospital in Port Elizabeth, and also in Groot Schuur. And while I was at Groot Schuur, I was linking up with the Robben Island prisoners. Eventually, they asked me to leave because I had actually been the go-between the prisoners and the ANC in exile with the Robben Island people when the prisoners came for specialist treatment. And I also helped set up the Detention and Treatment Torture Center, the Emergency Services Group, NAMDA, various other entities I was involved in. So those factors, but the term struggle doctor actually came from the patients because many of the struggle activists, they went to the practice, or sometimes some of the guerrillas were shot at. And, myself and a few other doctors had to late at night or in the early hours of the morning, we had to stitch them up because they would be arrested in the hospitals where the police were waiting. Of course, we risked losing our medical license and we risked losing everything because of that. But it was the time of the struggle. And so the guerrillas actually in the camps overseas gave the name Go to the Struggle Doctor. And that's how the name The Struggle Doctor came about. And
Somewhere
yes,
along the line, you heeded a call from the late President Nelson Mandela. He suggested that we needed Black people in the media to drive certain narratives, obviously, because for way too long, our media was very, very sanitized to suit certain interests. Um, why did you heed that call? What did you feel? You were a physician, a doctor. Did you think that you had it in you to take that up? It was a huge challenge, was it not?
Actually, I didn't think I had any of that in me because, to be frank, life is sometimes a situation where you don't make the choices; they make others make them for you. And I was really happy as a doctor. I had three medical degrees. I was a sports science specialist. I had an American fellowship in sports science. So my practice was fantastic, and I loved my patients. It was an amazing period of my life. Being a doctor was the best time of my life. The best 10 years of my life was being a doctor. Um, but what happened is that Mandela put together a grouping of people to really fund the ANC at the time. And he wanted people he could trust, and they included editors and ministers and others. And after a while, that fizzled out, and then people were speaking about empowerment, and Mandela said, "Look, we need people to be involved in the mainstream economy." And I was pulled in at the beginning when I was still practicing as a trustee, and then eventually, this became a business, and I said, okay, I would take some time off just to set up because I'm very good at organization. I'm very good at getting things done, and I would do that. And lo and behold, I didn't realize that that would be, and I thought I would go back to medicine. And I was even at the time I was offered a professorship both at UCT because I had multiple degrees in medicine, and also at Columbia University, the family medicine department in New York. And eventually, Second Jala overtook me. It wasn't me that chose Second Jala. In a way, it was this whole empowerment thing. And I was a socialist, to be honest, in the sense that I was community driven. My whole ethos. I drove a Beetle, old Beetle, for like 20 years. I made no money. My patients, they couldn't pay. They didn't pay. Pensioners never paid. You're disabled, you never paid. And also at the same time, I mean, if people couldn't afford to have food, I used to take money that I received and I gave it to people to buy food and things. So money was absolutely not something I was interested in. I'm still not interested in money today, as ironic as it sounds. So, but as things went on, Second Jalo took off, um, and I ended up being the youngest chief executive on the JSC. Sorry, it's just one of the dogs. The youngest chief
Yeah, I
executive
saw him.
when we listed the company in May 1999, 18 months after I left medicine. And that was a great period. But for me, business was about purpose. So it was about, today we employ 8,500 people, 40,000 dependents. We support um, hundreds of communities, support hundreds of entrepreneurs, of course, with a very strong Black focus, not exclusively so because we are non-racial. But so I'm very proud of the impact the group has had on our society. Media came very late in the game, and that was, I guess, the turning point for me as well, because right until 2013, I left medicine in 1990, end of 1997, beginning 98. Listed Second Jala in May 99, which was very quick, the one company. And we were very successful. We had our ups and downs like any business, but we were very successful. What I was most proud about was that young, Black, in particular women, female executives came through the system. So in 2013, my daughter actually said to me, "Dad, the media is so one-sided. It only speaks from the perspective of the rich and the whites and others." And that time, of course, in Cape Town, we read the Cape Times, the Argus, etc. And the idea was to set up something very small, and that eventually led towards buying independent media. But had I known what would happen to me next, I guess I would never have bought independent media, because I learned one thing at this time, Julie, that you can do anything in South Africa, but the moment you touch the media, you become enemy number one. And the white establishment, to be frank, controlled the media. I mean, just before Mandela became president, he in fact allowed Oppenheimer to sell the independent media group to the Irish in order for it not to get into black hands. And that was so just before Mandela passed on, I went to see him in Kunu. And the year before, I spent some time with my family with him in Kunu, and he was quite frail. But I told him, we were going to buy independent media, and he was so pleased because it was an opportunity to bring back the largest print media group in the country back to South Africa. And so I always remember his face, and he said, "Doctor, you've reversed the decision which I forever regretted in allowing independent media to leave South Africa." Of course, I wanted to focus, as we have done subsequently, on the stories of the poor, the stories of women abuse, the stories of racism, the stories of not the rich and the mighty and the powerful, which previously independent media used to be called the DA's mouthpiece,
Mm.
South Africa. So, we appointed predominantly today, I mean, it's predominantly black editors, many women editors, and, it's 1,500 people, but it's been an incredible journey because it's made me personally the target of the powerful establishment, the white establishment,
And
the
and that's where I come in. We come to the crux of this very uh, ugly uh, period in your life where it seems as if the knives were out for you. I'm going to read something from a Daily Maverick article. Commercial banks stare into Iqbal Survé's claims of collusion on the closure of his business's bank accounts. How long were you already in business when this saga started playing out? And I'm wondering what sort of an impact it had on your businesses, because about 2 weeks ago, I spoke to Tahir Mayepa, and he was very, very supportive of you and said that even during this very dark time in your life, you never fired or retrenched any staff members. You did everything possible in your power to retain all of your staff. So, talk to us about that time.
Julie, this has been a very difficult time. I think it's been the most challenging period of my life. It started after I bought independent media. The smear campaign started by the other media houses and by the establishment. But it became worse after Ramaphosa became president. And part of the reason is that independent was seen to be very critical of not just Ramaphosa, but Ramaphosa's funders are white capital in South Africa at the moment. So independent was seen to be a sort of a problem in the media space. And their strategy was very simple. First of all, the strategy was to smear me as much as possible, is to talk absolute nonsense. And if you do it enough, people start believing that. Eventually, that didn't work. And then what they did is they tried to use state institutions like the FSCA. They tried to use other state institutions. They set up an party commission ostensibly to look at investments, but all of that came to nothing, absolutely nothing. Eventually, they decided, you know what, there's only one way we're going to stop this guy and the black business that he represents and the media in particular, and that is to shut his bank accounts. And what was the reason? The reason was that it was reputational based on the media articles that were in the likes of the Daily Maverick and the likes of Media 24, the old apartheid media machine, and others. It was not based on anything else because the banks themselves admitted in the court papers that we have done nothing wrong. They said, in fact, never been corruption, never been money laundering, never been illicit transfers. So the only thing was that, we're in the media too much. But it is precisely our detractors and their media which they fund, which is responsible for that. So they started their shutting down of our different companies' bank accounts in August 2020. It started with ABSA.
How, sorry for the interruption, but we do have time constraints, so I'm going to speed you up here a bit. How did you manage to run your companies with all of your bank accounts shut down?
Well, they didn't. You see, this is what happened. They didn't. So we remember we have more than 200 companies across the
Okay.
revenues of about 10 billion and thousands of employees. So what they did is they started with one bank, ABSA, and then they gave a notice period, and then another bank started, and another notice period, and another bank started. And of course, it created the impression that the banks were acting independently of each other, but they were all saying the same things, singing from the same hymn sheet, so to speak. So we did two things which they
Hmm.
never expected us to do. The first is we took them to the Equality Court on the basis of discrimination, and we won the interdict against them. And the main case will happen sometime, hopefully, next year. But we were very successful in particular in that Equality Court application. They never expected it because we basically said they are in fact discriminating against us because we're a black entity because there's no evidence of any wrongdoing. The second thing is that we took them to the competitions tribunal. Now that was a devastating judgment that came out about a month ago, 2 3 weeks ago, where the tribunal in fact said that the banks, there's prima facie evidence that the banks have colluded against Second Jala Group in order to shut its accounts. The banks didn't expect that, I must tell you. The
Mm.
banks were absolutely stunned by the judgment of the Competition Tribunal. And of course, now the Competitions Commission is going to investigate the conduct of the banks. And so I'm very hopeful. You know, I always believe in the rule of law. I believe in judiciary. I believe in the systems of government. And I believe ultimately injustice will be, corrected and overcome.
Inshallah. Inshallah. Let me read a paragraph from another newspaper. I think it's called First Thing, and it seems as if this report, I don't even have the name of the reporter here, but I'm sure you are aware of this. There are two paragraphs. I'll read the first one and I'll go on to the second one. I'd like you to respond to that. It suggests that the serious nature of various allegations leveled at Survey contained in a final report by a commission of inquiry led by Judge Lex Mpati into the governance affairs of the Public Investment Corporation, PIC. The second paragraph. The Commission's report found that many of the PIC's now ill fated multi billion rand investments in Sekunjalo companies were not concluded based on investment merits, but the close relationship between the former PIC CEO, which is Dan Majitla, and surveys influence the PIC to invest in the latter's entities. So, how do you respond to that?
It's very simple, Julie. I'm very happy to send you a copy of Judge Heath's report. So, what
Mhm.
we did, because the Party Commission is not a court of law, it is simply a commission which was set up by Ramaphosa to target us. And so anybody can come there and make all wild allegations. You know, I can say, well, someone is actually from Mars, and then that becomes reality in the report. So we then appointed Judge Heath, the former head of the SIU, highly respected judge, to do an independent review of the party commission. And I'm happy to send you what he said. But in essence, he said the party commission report is a grave injustice to Sekunjalo and a grave injustice to myself. Over and above that, we went to the High Court in Cape Town and we've gone to set aside the party commission review on the basis of illegality. But let me make another point. These are simply allegations which have no basis in fact, right? And there is nobody, no law enforcement agency, no entity has ever charged anyone in Sekunjalo, which is 200 companies, with any wrongdoing. So how is it then that the banks continue to keep the accounts of entities such as Steinhoff, such as EOH, such as Tongaat Euler, and hundreds of other uh, companies that are criminals that have committed fraud open. Yet, and the banks themselves, as according to the Zondo Commission, by the way, committed fraud and committed corruption. We who have done nothing wrong, the Empati report, which is purely allegations made by outside people without any basis of fact. We were never given the opportunity to respond to that report. We were never told. But in any case, I'm going to make one thing very clear. The PIC has never invested in Sekunjalo, has never loaned Sekunjalo any money. One or two of the Sekunjalo subsidiaries have co-invested with the PIC. One of them is our tech investments entity, Aya, where we're a shareholder. We have an effective 30%. The PIC has 29%. Another one was Premier Fishing Brands, where the PIC co-invested with us as a listed entity. And in 25 years, of almost 25 years of being in business, the PIC has invested in perhaps only 3 of our entities, even though we've gone to them hundreds of times. So the suggestion that there is any special relationship, why don't they ask Patrice Motsepe, for example? The PIC have invested in 10 of his companies to date. Ramaphosa, the PIC has invested in at least 7 or 8 of his companies and associates. They wrote off 1.8 billion of the investment in MTN Nigeria, where Ramaphosa was involved. So why don't you ask Steinhoff, where the PIC has lost 28 billion? So far, the PIC has lost close on to 200 billion with all of these white companies. Yet they focus on us, which tells you that this is a targeted campaign to smear our group and to smear my name. You know what it is? They fear us, Julie. They fear
Can
us
I
because
ask you? Can I just digress here? What I admire about you is in the cool and calm manner in which you're conducting yourself during this interview, which is very commendable. Um, you're talking about all of these other entities, Steinhoff being one of them as well, and we know the stories of all of those companies. Your thought, and we'll come back to Sekunjalo, we'll come back to the issue around the bank accounts, etc. Your thoughts regarding state capture and the fact that the Guptas were supposedly, and I mean, you're a South African, born and bred South African citizen. I think you've paid your dues. And here you have these people from abroad coming to South Africa, captured the state, captured a whole host of high flying politicians. They're living the high life in the UAE. We've been told a couple of months ago that they've been arrested, and up to now heard nothing about them being brought to account. Your thoughts on that, being a media man yourself?
well, let me start off by saying that the Guptas and I are known to be sworn enemies. So that's the first point. The Guptas, in fact, tried to sue me for R1 billion, which is laughable. But I think I'm their number one business enemy in South Africa and was from the very beginning. They tried to take over independent, and I resisted them very, very strongly. And I took a principled position. I was the first person to oppose the Guptas long before it became fashionable to oppose the Guptas. Now, what the Guptas did is manifestly wrong. Of course, a court of law must, convict them. We cannot say people are guilty of anything unless they've had the opportunity in a court of law to have their side of the point of view heard as well. But South Africa went through a very difficult period, what is called state capture. But state capture is a term which is used to only describe the period under the Jacob Zuma administration. However, the reality is, under the current Ramaphosa administration, the amount of corruption, the amount of mismanagement, incompetence runs into the hundreds of billions, if not more than $1 trillion. And the reality is that the current administration is far more guilty of looting this country. And it is because independent media has been so forthright and so critical in exposing. We exposed the PPE corruption. It was us that showed how they were going to try and steal, at least 50 or 60 billion. It was us that exposed the Ramaphosa bank account. It was us who exposed the Pala Pala. It was us that exposed the corruption in Eskom. Because we continue to do so, as we did under Jacob Zuma and we do under Ramaphosa, we are now being targeted, and I am being targeted. So it's very simple. What they're
Do
doing
you
is
think, Dr. Survey, that the powers that be that are gunning for you are going to let up, realize, throw in the towel and realize that you are way more powerful than they expected you to be? I'm looking at Nedbank's response to your lawyer. Your lawyer has gone on to say, which is obviously Advocate Vuyani Ngalwana, acting for Sekunjalo and its other entities, accused the banks of coordinating their discussions and behavior in terminating the bank accounts of Survey's businesses, a sign that banks allegedly colluded and fell foul of the law, mainly the Competitions Act. It goes on to say that your advocate also took umbrage at the fact that the PIC is interested in most of the commercial banks. He argued that the banks with the PIC, which of course they are suing you, have a common interest in seeing bank facilities being denied to Sekonjalo, a black-owned and managed company. And then finally, your lawyer has this to say: Sekunjalo has not been charged with money laundering, which you had indicated right up front, or terrorism, but is being subjected to economic strangulation because bad things have been written about the company by rival media. Banks don't like Dr. Survey and are flexing their muscles for sinister goals, hampering transformation and Sekunjalo's contribution to the economy. And of course, the banks have hit back, mainly Nedbank. So your lawyers come up with solid arguments in favor of you and Sekunjalo, but now the banks have hit back, and that is, of course, Nedbank, Standard Bank, and First Rand. And I'm sure you've read those reports already.
look, it's very simple, right? We are a very successful black enterprise, worth tens of billions, and we've lost value of tens of billions over the last while because of this attack on us. I think it's important to understand, Julie, unlike other large scale very few black business leaders have been able to scale to the heights that we have, in the sense that, we've become a corporate, with a corporate structure with public companies listed on the stock market. We're on 40 countries in the African continent. We've expanded overseas. We're in the very industries that compete with white business, whether it is e-commerce, technology, food, and fishing. Media makes up less than 3% of our assets, for example. So the media investment is really what I call philanthropy for us. It's, we support independent media with about 200 million a year to employ 1,400 journalists and others in that organization. We keep jobs going in this country. So what is the fight against me really about? Well, they feel I'm too independent. I'm not one of the boys. I came from very humble, poor background, and and I'm not one of the Stellenbosch guys. I didn't go to a private school, and I don't think like them, and I don't live my life like them. I live a very simple and a humble life. So they would like me to play golf, have Ferraris, have jets, do all these kind of things. They want me to be one of the boys, so to speak. It's a boys' club, this. And I refuse to be. I'd rather use my resources to fight for freedom, to fight for human rights, to create jobs in our country, and to do the right thing and to have transformation. Now, no other black person that has got significant wealth thinks like I do in this country right now. I'm the only one that's prepared, and I've also invested in media. So they fear that the media that we've invested in is going to give South Africans a very different view of what's really taking place in the country. And that's exactly what our journalists and our editors.
Absolutely. I'm so sorry. I'm going to have to wrap up now, but two very important questions. And I know you have indicated that media is just one small arm of your vast business empire. But going forward, do you believe with social media having taken the globe by storm, that broadsheets still have a space to play and the future of media as we know it because of social media?
Julie, we're in all different aspects of media online. We are in the syndication service, the African News Agency. We in print, we in magazines, we in digital. And of course, print is the one that is the most challenging for all sorts of various reasons, well known. Social media has really taken off, but print remains the validation. So something about paper. When you see your name in paper, people take it seriously. When you see your company, what's happening in society, but our media continues to do, reasonably okay, considering we still have 8 million readers. We
Wow.
still, yeah, it's a lot, and we have the
Mm,
largest Zulu newspaper in the country, 1 million readers
okay.
a day. For example, we have all the daily titles nationally. We are solid
Mm,
on the weekends. So people love the newspapers. But look, the reason why media is in a difficult space is because the cost of printing, publishing, distributing, all of
absolutely.
those make media less attractive from a commercial perspective. But it plays an important role in a society. Someone once said, the media is a reflection of a society, and that's
Absolutely.
what we do.
Okay, I have to end it, but I've got to ask you this last question. Is the fight now over? Are you moving on? Is it done and dusted as far as you and the banks are concerned? Or is there still negotiations ahead of both the banks and you?
Um, Julie, the reality is that the banks are never going to stop fighting me, and it's let's not say it's the banks. Let's call it for what it is. It is the white establishment. It is white capital. They're trying to bully a black businessman like myself and a black company like Second Jalo, and they're trying to destroy a black media house. And that fight is not going to continue because, sorry, it's not going to stop because this is a fight for the soul of the country. And I'm standing up fighting for the rights of black people and transformation and for human rights. And of course, and what they would love me to do is to leave the country and to go and enjoy my wealth overseas. And and the
Lucky
whole
you, lucky
and
you.
the
Very finally, do you
the
believe
whole
Murdoch is involved here at all?
in South Africa, I don't think he's involved in
No,
Africa. No, I don't think so. I
no.
don't think there's any publications yet.
Now, I know he doesn't, but I do know that he has his tentacles all around the world. And I thought there might just be interest by him, in your interest. So perhaps. But Dr. Iqbal Survé, I'd love to talk to you for hours on end, but we have reached the end of this show. Undoubtedly, we will hook up again sometime in the future. So pleased for you, Alhamdulillah, that you're fighting the good fight and you're going ahead. And very especially the fact that during the difficult times, the challenges that you faced at Sekunjalo, that you never ever retrenched anybody. You made certain that everybody was gainfully employed and they put food on the table. So, I accept all of your efforts. Thank you for
Yes,
being with us on the show
great.
this morning.
Kram. Sorry about the dogs in the
No
background.
worries. Go well and salam alaikum to you. And there you have it, Iqbal Survé, Dr. Iqbal Survé, talking to us about the fight by the banks with him, Sekunjalo. He's cleared up some of those misconceptions, and let's see how this issue moves forward in the future. That brings me to the end of my show today. I do hope I'm getting an increase or some sort of a bonus because I stayed way over time today. Let's see what management has to say about that. Till tomorrow morning at the same time, as always, please take care. Safety on the roads and keep hydrated. Assalamu alaikum from me, Julie Ali, and a big thank you to our production team.